Hey guys, this is Katie Kaz with Tat-Stories. Welcome back to our channel. We have a couple different topics we're going to talk about today. One topic we really wanted to break down for you guys, we got a lot of feedback from our commenters and our followers on YouTube, is younger people, or namely students, getting tattoos. I think this could be a little bit of a dicey subject, only because there are definitely young people out there who may be under the age of 18 or maybe in college. You've seen some ink around and you've been really inspired to get your first tattoo. There may be a little bit of component of how do you talk about that decision with your parents or your guardians, especially if, you just turned 18. I can definitely tell you guys from my own experience, I got several of my first tattoos before I was 18. And I'm really excited to talk about my experience, kind of how I broke the news to my parents with that, how they reacted. And then we'll go ahead and talk about just some considerations if you are a younger person or a student wanting to get a tattoo. What are some helpful ways you can break that conversation with your parents or guardians? And we're also going to dive into a little bit of the perspective of parents, too. How do our moms and dads feel about us as their children or, nieces and nephews getting tattoos? After that, we're going to talk a little bit about general considerations as well for making that decision, what considerations just for you yourself if you're a younger person, and then what might happen if you have that conversation with your parents. What's the best way to go about it? What if they don't react the way that you anticipate? And we'll go from there. So to kick off this segment, we wanted to start with a perspective from a parent. We interviewed Donna, and she's going to tell us a little bit about her son who has a tattoo and how she discovered that he got it and what happened from there. So we'll kick it over to Donna.
About 18 years ago, I happened to see my son sleeping on the couch taking a nap, and his shirt sleeve was rolled up. And I saw what I was not supposed to see, and that is his initials inked onto his left shoulder. So I was furious and very upset. Here was my baby who had marred his body for life and did it without me knowing anything about it. And why couldn't he have at least talked to me about it? So I was very upset about it. And I had to make some decisions. After I calmed down, it was whether I would stay angry and really have an attitude and alienate him, or somehow join him in his interest. And I decided to get what I once had a coach, a leadership coach. I was an executive director of an organization. And one of the things she used the word that I'll never forget, and she used the word get curious. And that is really, for me, a metaphor of parenting. And so I did eventually, after a while, get curious and try to understand a little bit about what that meant to him. He had his initials, and that was sort of I never quite understood what that was about, but it was important to him, that sense of identity and branding himself, so to speak. What I would say to a parent is sort of keep that word in your mind, curious. And really, the tattoo is pretty much a small thing. And for me, it's like a metaphor of parenting. And, I think when we're parents, we want our children to be smart and do well in school and pick a good career and do very well. And the fact is, they are their own people. And whether it's a tattoo or choosing a career in music, as my daughter did, and she could have been a brain surgeon, she was so smart. It's really all about getting curious with our children and understanding who they are and what their talents are and what their interests are and what's important to them. Because it's not our life to live, it's their life to live. And if they choose to get a tattoo on their shoulder or their forearm or wherever they put their tattoo and whatever it is, I think it's important for us as parents to really bond with our children and get curious about what their beliefs and what their interests are. And it's amazing the kinds of things we might learn. And my experience in writing the book, Tattoo Monologues, is that tattoos tend to be very important to people, whether that's part of their belief system and a symbol of something that is near and dear to them, or it's a part of a recovery from a trauma. tattoos play an important part in people's lives, whether we as parents like it or not. I'll just add that I eventually went with my son and got a tattoo myself.
All right, so coming back from Donna's perspective, we kind of wanted to reel it back in. Tat-Stories has a couple considerations that we feel were important to share with the community from a parent's perspective. If you have a child, a niece or nephew, or some other young person in your life that is deciding to get a tattoo or may have already gotten a tattoo, what are some ways that you can have open dialogue with that person and really try to bridge any sort of gap between what they're looking to do, why they're making that decision, and how you may feel about it, especially if it's, your son or daughter. So a couple things. I think this is true to form in most tough or new conversations is listen, right? If you have a son or daughter who is looking to get a tattoo, it can probably be really easy to think, is this an influence from their college friends, or is this a snap decision that they're not really thinking about for the rest of their life, or what implications it might have? I think first and foremost, choosing to listen and really sit down with that person or that child and talk about why they want the tattoo, what the tattoo might be, and then imparting some, parental wisdom on them based on what you've seen in the world. How could that tattoo potentially be interpreted or seen by future employers or other people, kind of guiding them down the path of, if this is something that you really want, here's what I want you to know just as a consideration as you move through life with this tattoo. A couple other things too. I think, any healthy relationship is going to be a two-way street. So if you can keep that dialogue as a back and forth, I can speak from experience. Friends of mine who have had tattoos and then told their parents have been shut down pretty quickly. And I think that was pretty discouraging to my friends and kind of hurt their pride or the reason they wanted to get the tattoo. And they almost felt like the tattoo wasn't meaningful after that. And I don't think any parent really wants their child or niece or nephew to feel that way. So allowing that to be a two-way street, especially if you're having this conversation before the tattoo is actually on your son or daughter, just letting them know how you feel, sharing your opinion in an open and honest way, it can often be the best recipe for success when you're trying to just make sure that your son or daughter is making the right decision when it comes to getting a tattoo. And then finally, if you are a parent or guardian figure who is not familiar with tattoos, if you don't have any yourself, or if you don't know anyone who has tattoos, it can always be really helpful to do a little research on your own as well. So you can take a look on the internet as to what does the tattoo process look like? What are the safety measures involved in cleaning tattoo stations and making sure that needles are appropriately sanitized, all of that. And then it might also be helpful to even look into what is the background or meaning of the specific tattoo that your child wants to get. We actually have a lot of great Tat-Stories videos on that. If you guys scroll through our channel, you can get a lot of great information on the tattoo process, different styles and different meanings behind them. And that can open a lot of doors in terms of really understanding why would your son or daughter want to get that tattoo? What does the tattoo mean to your son or daughter? And hopefully kind of open up a little more of a bridge of understanding when they're looking to make such a permanent decision as getting ink on their body. So now that we've talked about the parental perspective and given you guys some considerations, we're going to flip that coin and we're going to go to a student or a younger person's perspective. We have a couple interviews we're so excited to share with you guys for some younger folks, college students who have gotten tattoos at an early age and what they thought about them. So we'll check it out now.
I was 18 years old when I first got my tattoo, my first tattoo. My family reacted pretty well to it, all things considered. It was a pretty small one. I'm sure had they known that 4 years later and 30 tattoos later, I'd end up like this, the reaction might be a little different, but I mean, if it was bigger, sure, they probably would have been a lot more upset, but I think they were just happy that it wasn't on my face. It was just on my arm. Do it with a lot more confidence. Don't be afraid. Even if they don't approve of it, who cares? Like, this is my life and I'm gonna live it the way that I want to. Just say it with just, this is my tattoo. Here you go. If you like it, cool. If not, then what are you gonna do about it?
So my first tattoo I got when I was 16. So I was really good at hiding them so my parents wouldn't find out. Really good at it. This one was my first piece that was on an extremity that was mostly seen like 24/7. So that one was a piece that he was like, "Are you sure? Like, are you ready?" And I was like, "Hell yeah."
What did Mom and Dad say when they saw that first piece of ink?
Should we just assume that you're going to be covered from head to toe?
And are your mom and dad okay with it now?
They've kind of realized I'm my own human. So she'll be like, every time she sees a new one though, she's like, "Really?" She goes, "When'd you get this one?" I was like, "Yesterday."
All right, now that we've heard from some real life students on how their conversations went when they broke it to their parents about tattoos, I have a little 2 cents to add as well. So as our friends at Tat-Stories probably know, and the guys that I run Tat-Stories with, Ty and John, also already know, my first couple tattoos were actually before the age of 18, did not tell my parents. Not that I can officially recommend going to someone who's going to tattoo underage or anything like that. But, being 15, wanting a tattoo, feeling really strongly about something and wanting to represent that on your body, I found a tattoo studio that was not requiring me to be 18, and I went ahead and did it, as one does. And what I can say, kind of reflecting on that experience 15 years later, is really that regardless of age, I don't know that I would have done anything differently. I had really thought about the tattoo I wanted. To this day, it still means something to me. It wasn't explicit or anything like that. Would I have told my parents ahead of time and maybe waited till I was 18? Sure. But I really think regardless of if you're getting a tattoo and you don't tell your parents, or you tell your parents and they don't approve, I think the biggest piece of success after that is navigating that conversation in an open and honest way with your parents, keeping in mind that most of the decisions that your parents make are trying to protect you, or they're out of love and they just want to make sure that you're making good decisions and living a good life. So if you come at it from that perspective, if there's any shock value when you pull up your arm or pull up your sleeve and you have a whole tatted arm that you didn't tell your parents about, maybe just give them a little grace, give your parents a little bit of leeway there if they, maybe aren't jazzed about it at first. But what I did actually is I sat my parents down. I finally felt a year after I got the tattoo that it was time to just show it to them and let them know that this is something that was important to me. Surprisingly, my parents actually took it with a grain of salt. They took it, in stride. And the conversation went over really well. The biggest thing they were just disappointed about is that I didn't tell them. But ultimately, in the end, I ended up having a really cool conversation with my parents about what decisions I went, or what considerations I went through to get the tattoo, making sure it wasn't something that was going to absolutely hinder employment possibilities when I was older, and had a really cool understanding with my parents that at the end of the day, whatever I wear on my body is not a reflection of my entire personality. I'm still their daughter. I'm still this type of person, no matter what my skin looks like or what designs I have on it. And since then, I think my parents have actually gotten really excited about the tattoos that I get. I always show them now my designs ahead of time. I have a tattoo on my back that is actually dedicated to my parents and my little sister. My mom cried when I got it and I showed her. And it's become this really cool sort of artistic conversation that I have with my parents every year or so when I get a new piece of art. So if you are a student out there who's considering getting a tattoo, whether you're telling your parents or not, Tat-Stories wants to talk to you guys about a little bit of general considerations. One, at the end of the day, you're probably going to do whatever you want to do. You're going to do what you feel is right for yourself, and we totally respect that here at Tat-Stories. It is worthwhile to listen to your parents and just hear what they have to say. Again, there may be some people out there who have parents who come from religious or cultural families where getting a tattoo might have a very different meaning to their generation than it does to yours. And I think there's a lot of respect in just sitting down and listening to your parents and letting them express that, regardless of if you still get a tattoo or not. Second thing is, understand too, a lot of parents who say, hey, this is on you for life. There's truth to that, and there's a lot of common sense in that, right? It's a permanent decision you're making. It's worthwhile to take a second and sit with yourself and ask, okay, I'm 16, 17, 18, maybe a little older. Is this really something that, I want to carry on me and represent for the rest of my life? Is it something that shows a deep value or a deep passion that I have? And what could those implications be 10, 20, and 30 years from now if I still have this tattoo? And lastly, like I said, making sure that you're moving through the process correctly, choosing an artist that really speaks to the style and the design you want, considering the decision of getting a permanent piece of art on your body, making sure that all precautions for sanitation are taken, etc. If anything, it's just going to put your parents' mind at ease that if you're going to do it, if you're going to rebel and get a tattoo either way, you're doing it as safe as possible, which is ultimately all your parents want. All right, you guys, thank you so much for sticking with us so far. In summary, talking about, young people and students getting tattoos, couple things to keep in mind as you go forward. There are two sides to this coin, right? There are you as a young person or a student getting a tattoo, and then there's the parent or guardian side. Having those conversations is always going to be unique depending on the situation you're in. And it's worth it to have both sides listening to each other, communicating openly, making sure that you're thinking about why you want to get the tattoo, what does it mean to you, and then how can you convey that meaning or that value to the parents that you might be talking to or to the guardians that you might be explaining, hey, I got this tattoo or I really want to get this piece. Once again, these can be somewhat difficult conversations, but in the end, if you're approaching it with an open mind, making the right decision, they can also be really awesome conversations. If you guys have any questions at all, feel free to drop them in the comments. We're always watching, and make sure you hit that subscribe button. Thank you so much for joining us on Blue Coller Ink.